we're picking up and drawing perspective on that front. But for the moment, we leave it at that. Let's shift our focus now. US President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, will not attend what could be likely the first peace talks between Moscow and Kiev in 3 years. Although Putin will be sending experienced negotiators to conduct the talks with Ukraine, the negotiation talks are scheduled to happen in Turkey. Remember, it was Putin who had proposed direct negotiations with Ukraine in Istanbul without any preconditions. But to further understand that, I'm being joined in by my guest this evening, Dr. Rajan Kumar, Associate Professor of International Studies, JNU. Mr. Kumar, thank you very much for taking the time out and joining us here on ET Now. Let me first begin by asking you this. If Trump has made it clear that nothing will happen until he and Putin meet, then one can only ask, looking at that particular statement, how does one read into it? If there's a plan, then why not act on it now?
Thank you, Nivedna, for having me here. And yes, I think in a way, Putin is right. Because what Russia has done, that expectations were really high, that because Putin had proposed it initially and Trump had agreed, and Zelensky also kind of agreed to that proposal. But what has happened is that Russia sent a second level of negotiators, the first rate negotiators, or it was expected that President Putin might come. He refused to come, but he has sent his negotiator. Medinsky is the key negotiator from the Russian side. And there is also a confusion. There's also confusion about the place, etc. At the moment, Ukrainians, including Zelensky, delegation is in Ankara, which is the capital, and Russian delegates arrived in Istanbul. So the meeting was about to start, but it has not happened as of now, as I guess. The reason why Trump is saying that without me and the negotiation will not take place, because he is in a way he's right, because unless and until he puts some pressure on Putin and he kind of puts pressure on Putin to accept some of the to give concessions to Ukraine in terms of deal, etc. Because at the moment, Russian demands are very extreme. Russia is saying that Ukraine will not be the member of NATO. Russia is saying that the territories that it has occupied will remain with Russia, including Crimea. And also it is saying that, that there should be no supplies, military or defense supplies to Ukraine. And Russia is also asking on cutting the size of Ukrainian military. I think these are extreme demands, and Ukrainians have rejected these demands, let me tell you. Ukrainians are saying this is tantamount to a capitulation of Ukrainian sovereignty before Russia. So it's very unlikely that Ukrainian delegates will agree to that demand. And these are the kinds of decisions which cannot be taken by second level of negotiator. From the Russian side, the Deputy Defense Minister, Deputy Foreign Minister, and Vladimir Medinsky is there. And Medinsky is also a very hardliner, conservative Russian negotiator. He was the culture minister of Russia, and now he was also the part of the earlier negotiation which had started in 2022 when the negotiations were taking place in Belarus and Turkey earlier, the same place in Istanbul earlier. But that didn't succeed, and we have seen 2 years and 3 years of crisis after that. So the chances are at this moment are very low. But what Russia is saying that let's work out on the details, and then probably the president can go and negotiate. So unless until some draft is ready, there is no point sending sending President Putin to meet President Trump. And they also fear that what happened in disaster that happened when Zelensky went to White House and nothing came out, and he was humiliated.
Understood your opening remarks in that purview of the same. Let me ask you this, since we're talking about, sorry to have interjected you, but given the aspect that if Trump claims he's the key to peace, then why sound it off? Then you step up.
Well, Trump is willing to go. Let me tell you, he's on a tour to Persian Gulf. He has been to Riyadh. He's been to Qatar, and he's going to UAE. And there is no plan from his side to visit Turkey. But he has said that he's willing to go to Istanbul in case it's needed, in case Putin decides to come. Putin, for a very, the Russian team for at least 2 days didn't clarify that who will be the members of the Russian delegate, and there is a speculation that Putin might change his mind, and because Russia is also trying to send a message to President Trump that it is willing to negotiate, but it is not willing to negotiate under any pressure, and that's exactly the reason I believe that Putin walked out at the last moment. And Putin decided not to go, fearing that probably the draft is not ready. Probably there might be some kind of some kind of what happened with Zelensky in White House. Russia is avoiding that kind of situation. So that's the reason why Putin didn't go. And since Putin is not going, so there is no point, President Trump changing his plan from UAE and visiting Istanbul, because that makes absolutely no sense.
But Mr. Kumar, as you say that, given the fact that Russia has gone on to say that Zelensky is a clown and a loser, and then we're looking at the war of words where Zelensky has said stand-in props have been sent. Given that particular aspect and how that is panning out as well, how do you read into that? Is Zelensky still seen as a strong negotiator?
Well, not really. What Russia is saying that Zelensky is just is a proxy for the West. That's what Russia says, and he knows that Zelensky is not the person who decides. From the Russian perspective, the decision is taken either in Washington D.C. or it is taken in the European capitals. Since Russia has refused to negotiate with the European capitals, it is saying that that it will negotiate only with the top leaders of the world. So that also gives some kind of legitimacy to Russia that Putin will go only when President Trump comes, but unless until the draft is ready, unless until the terms of reference are ready, Russia will not send its top delegate for any kind of negotiation, fearing that Russia also has its own. Russia is playing double game here. Let me tell you. The first is that it is trying to send a message to the West that it is willing to negotiate, so that United States does not change its policy towards Ukraine. At the moment, US is not supporting Ukraine, and you know it very well. So Russia fears that in case it decides not to go for the negotiation, it would be viewed as disruptor. So that brand Russia doesn't want. But at the same time, Russia is not willing to change its extremist maximalist demand, which includes NATO membership, no NATO membership to Ukraine, and also that European countries should not send its troops, and they should not supply defense and military support to Ukraine. So because Russia probably views that it has the upper hand, because on the territorial conflict which is happening, every day Russia is occupying one village and the other. So Russia has the upper hand, and it is trying to dictate its term for negotiation. Yes, it will agree for some concessions, but only on two conditions. First, no NATO membership to Ukraine. That is the prime basic demand of Russia. And let me tell you that Russia will not accept anything less than that. Yes, Russia might accept Ukrainians' European Union membership, but unfortunately, European Union is also not offering membership at this moment. Russia will also not concede the territories that it has occupied, and that is pretty clear to Trump, but European countries are not willing to concede on that. From the Ukrainian side, Ukrainians are asking for just two things, and they're right about it. Let me tell you, they're saying that there should be negotiations on the territories which Russia has occupied, and Ukraine is also saying that there should be some kind of security guarantee from the West. Unfortunately, the West is also not providing that kind of security, that if NATO membership is not giving, so what kind of security guarantee can be provided to Ukraine? And so confusion and negotiations will take place exactly on this
that
issue.
Very point of how Ukraine is looking at this, will these this particular talk that is seeing a dead end, will that push them to get stronger negotiators in terms of beyond the West for Ukraine, that is?
I think
to be establishing those relationships, perhaps?
No, I think it's very unlikely. It's too early to expect, any very positive kind of breakthrough kind of agreement at this moment. Why? Because the terms of negotiations which have been put forward by Russia, they are extreme and maximalist. Yes, Russia will agree to concessions, but it will take time, and I do not expect much in Istanbul. And also because the Ukrainian side is also backed by European capitals, so they are also not trying they're also not willing to negotiate on these sensitive issues of territorial this occupation and the issue of NATO membership, etc. So I think the talks have begun, and that's the right step for any kind of agreement. But also there is a third issue which has been raised by Ukraine and also European countries. They are asking for 1 month ceasefire, and Putin is saying, the Russian side is saying that will not agree to ceasefire unless and until there are talks on on this issue and there's some progress. So that is also a kind of a point where the two sides do not agree. So it's very unlikely that they'll come to any positive conclusion, and that's what I guess.
All right, Mr. Kumar, I appreciate you putting that into perspective as to how you're looking at this. All in all, you're saying it's the right step given the fact that these talks are happening, but we might not look at a potential breakthrough coming out of it. But that only time is going to tell if and when that's going to happen. But for the moment, we leave the conversation at that. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's now move on to tell you how the United States